Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to subtract decimal numbers. So there are two basic rules of subtracting decimal numbers. The first rule is to line up the decimal points of the decimal numbers, and the second rule is to subtract digits in the same place value position. If you need a quick review of place value, please check my adding decimal numbers video. I will be going over these problems throughout the video, and I will also have quick review of subtracting whole numbers so you get the idea of how to subtract decimal numbers. So the first problem is to subtract 5.774 by 2.371. So we're going to follow the first rule by lining up the decimal points of the two numbers. And you can write a subtraction sign in the front. And then we are going to subtract from right to left. So the second rule says to subtract digits in the same place value position. So let's look at the thousandths place first. 4 minus 1 is 3. And then at the hundredths place, 7 minus 7 is 0. At the tenths place, 7 minus 3 is 4. And we just copy down the decimal points that we line up. And at the ones place, 5 minus 2 is 3. So the answer of this problem is 3.403. Now before we go over the next problem, I want to have a quick review of subtracting whole numbers. Let's say we want to subtract 9 from 31. And what you want to do is first you write down 31 and then you write 9 at the ones place because it's only one digit. And we don't have enough to subtract from 1 because we have a 9. So we need to borrow a 1 from 3. And if we borrow 1 from 3, we have 2 left. And I'm going to show you what it means on the right side. So if you have 30, when you borrow a 1, that means you borrow 10. So you have 20 left. And now that we borrow a 10, 10 plus 1 is 11. So that means we will have 11 here. And we need to subtract 9 from 11. So 11 minus 9 is 2. And because we have the 20 left, we write it down at the tens place. So our final answer is 22. And we're going to use the same logic when we borrow numbers later in the following problems. So our next problem is 6.68 minus 4.78. Again, follow the first rule. We're going to line up the decimal points. And we're going to subtract from right to left. So on the right side at the 100ths place, 8 minus 8 is 0, so just write down 0. And at the 10ths place, we have 6 minus 7, and we don't have enough, so we need to borrow a 1 from the ones place. And if you look at the top, we have 6 right here, and after we borrow a 1, we have 5 left. So then we can cross out this 6 and make it 16 because we already borrowed 1 from the other side. 16 minus 7 is 9. And then we just write down the decimal point. And since we have the 5 left, 5 minus 4 gives us 1. So our final answer is 1.9. Next problem, we have 6.6 minus 4.78. I already lined up the decimal points, but notice there's space above 8. You can just write a 0 here. And now if you look at this, we see that we don't have enough to subtract 8. So we need to borrow a 1 from the tens place. So after you borrow a 1, you will have 5 left. So let's cross out and write 5. And then we can cross out the 0 and write 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2. And if you look at the tenths place, you see that 5 minus 7, we don't have enough to subtract again, so we're going to borrow from the ones place. So cross out the 6 and we write 5 because you only borrow 1. So now we need to make the number on the tens place 15. So 15 minus 7 is 8, and we copy down the decimal number. Alright, so look at the ones place. 5 minus 4 equals 1. So our final answer is 1.82. Alright, the next problem, you need to subtract 4.78 from 6. Notice when I write the two numbers vertically, you don't see the decimal point for 6, but how do I know I need to put 6 right there? If you think about this, 6 is basically 6.00. These two numbers are equivalent. And you always have a decimal point to the right of the ones place and to the left of the tenths place. Alright, so that means I just need to write the decimal point here and write the 0, 0. But before we go over this problem, I want to do a quick review of subtracting whole numbers because it will really help you to understand what we are going to do next. So let's say I'm subtracting 100 by 78. Now, if you look at this, you know that we don't have enough to subtract 8 because it's only 0. There's nothing we can do. But then there's also nothing to borrow from the place to the left because it's another 0. So what you're going to do is you just have to borrow from the next number place over. Alright? Think of it as you're borrowing 1 from a 10. So after you borrow a 1 from a 10, you're going to get a 9, right? So if you already borrow a 1, then you can write 10 here. So 10 minus 8 is 2. And then you have 9 minus 7, which is 2. And when you subtract 100 by 78, you do get 22. So we're going to use the same logic for the problem on the left side. Now in this problem, we don't have enough to subtract 8. We also don't have enough to subtract 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow a 1 from, let's think of this as 60, right? So that means I will have 59 left. So I'm going to write 5 above the 6 and 9 above the 0 on the tens place. So since I borrow a 1, I can cross out this 0 and I'm going to write 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. And if you look at the tens place, 9 minus 7 gives you 2. And then on the ones place, you have 5 minus 4, which is 1. And also don't forget to copy down the decimal point. So the answer of this problem is 1.22. In the last problem, we're going to subtract 3.008 from 6.002. So now we have another 0, but it's okay, we're just going to use the same method again. Notice you don't have enough to subtract 8 from 2, so we're going to borrow from the next place over, but now we have two zeros. So what we're going to do is we are going to think of this as we're borrowing 1 from 600. So we know that 600 minus 1 equals 599. Right? So we can just cross out this and write 5 on top of 6, and then 9 on top of 0, and another 9 on top of 0. And now that we borrow a 1, we are going to change the 2 to 12. So 12 minus 8 is 4. And if we look at the hundredths place, 9 minus 0 is just 9, so we write it down. And simple, for tenths place, 9 minus 0 is 9 again. And we copy down the decimal points. And on the ones place, 5 minus 3 is 2. So finally, our answer for this problem is 2.994.